Welcome to the Blockchain Hustle, where I take a look at some interesting plays of how blockchain technology is opening up new business vistas across multiple industries. Hi everyone, this is your host Meenu Serene with today's episode on the applications of smart contract. In my earlier episode, I had shared on what is a smart contract. So let me do a quick revisit to that before moving on to its business applications. A smart contract is actually a self-executing contract. The actions to execute and the conditions when these actions need to be executed, they are put together into a program. And this code is called the smart contract. The smart contract removes the need for the intermediaries and which basically translates into that the participants, they can enter into an agreement and they can transact directly without a third party intermediary. The rules of the transaction are what goes into the smart contract. Now the smart contract, I would say, is akin to a vault, and under certain conditions the value in the vault gets unlocked. And that value could be efficiencies, cost, time, and so forth, process efficiencies, or it could be access rights, or it could be anything else, but some kind of a value. And being on a blockchain, this provides a very verifiable way on how one can embed rules and the business logic onto a code. Now, there are certain features of a smart contract which make it especially very viable for businesses. And I list a few out here. One is autonomous. The contract will get executed when the conditions are met. There is no revoking or a partial execution. When the conditions are met, the contract does get executed and autonomously. Then all the permitted nodes on a blockchain, all the parties which have got the permission to access, to write, or to whatever action, all the permitted parties can see what is there in a smart contract, they can see the data, they can access it according to their access rights. So it is transparent and it's also auditable. And then there is this feature of immutability. No single entity can change the smart contract once it has been agreed over. No single entity can change it without the consensus of the network. But however, there is a little bit of flexibility. And that flexibility is as long as it has a complete consensus of the blockchain network. And so with this, certain updates to the agreement can be made, but I reiterate, it has to have the consensus of the parties which are involved. And it is cryptographically secure. Now, I would list a few examples out here, and one of them to start with is on the business process efficiencies. The business processes are converted into the blockchain logic, and this results into a number of efficiencies. I'll cite a couple of examples here. The first one is on the secure and an efficient document workflow. And the example that I would like to share here is one between it's a solution which was developed by the Antwerp Port Authority and a local Dutch blockchain startup called T-Mining. Now together they had developed a solution for a very efficient and a secure documents flow. And the documents that we are talking about here are the certificate of origin and another certificate called the phytosanitary certificate. The latter is a certificate which basically guarantees the safety of the fruits and the vegetables. And these documents in this pilot blockchain case, they were transferred over blockchain and the flow was automated using smart contracts. Now, before we get on to that, just let me give you a little bit of an insight or an idea about how the traditional process works. So there are multiple parties which are involved in the import of the fruits and the vegetables, as in any other export-import stuff. Now here, in this particular case, there was food which was exported from New Zealand to Belgium. Now the food agency in New Zealand, it issues a phytosanitary certificate. The New Zealand exporter, he will transfer the certificate along with this consignment to a forwarding agent. And the forwarding agent will hand over the certificates to the Belgian authorities, which will review it, inspect it, and see before they can release the consignment into their country, into Belgium. Now, traditionally, these transfers were done by courier, so which meant delays, costs, and it was basically an inefficient process. So what these guys did in the pilot project is that they first digitalized these certificates, and then these certificates were put onto the blockchain and then get transferred across the blockchain network. The smart contracts automate and secure the flow of the document and the information flow across the various parties. And only when certain rules, only when certain conditions are met, then the information flow and the document gets released to the authorized party. Otherwise, it doesn't. So this led to a very secure and a cost-effective, time-effective process. Now, the second example that I would like to share on the business process efficiencies is the one on the letter of credit process, which was a solution developed by Bank of America Merrill Lynch along with Microsoft. Now, the Bank of America solution, it moved this entire LOC process to a single self-executing smart contract. Now, this letter of credit is basically a guarantee of payment by an issuing bank on behalf of the applicant to a beneficiary. Now, take this LOC process. There are multiple parties which are involved, multiple documentation, multiple reviewing of the same, and it is prone to a lot of errors and inaccuracies, and quite often a very late discovery of a problem. Traditionally, it has been a paper-based trail, and which in the Bank of America case, it took 5 days to raise an LOC, which was brought down to around 5 to 10 minutes in a blockchain. From the 14 steps in the traditional process, it got down to 4, and the error rate, which was mostly due to manual issues, and the error rate, which was up to 50%, was brought down to almost 0. And the interesting part was that while Microsoft collaborated with the Bank of America to optimize its the letter of credit process, it also addressed its own letter of credit process, and it deployed a private blockchain network, which it did over Ethereum. Now, even for small businesses, this kind of an automation can make life a lot easier and cheaper. Escrow is a service which is worth billions of dollars, and these services can easily be replaced by smart contracts. So the process which happens is something on these lines. The beneficiary, he buys the tokens with his fiat currency. These tokens are the tokens of the underlying blockchain network, and these tokens go to a specific address on the blockchain, and then they're held there. Once the beneficiary sends an acknowledgement on the receipt of the products or the services, whatever he had requested for, these tokens which were held are automatically released to the supplier. And that is done by the execution of a smart contract. The supplier can then, if he wants, he can convert the tokens back into the fiat, otherwise he can let them remain as tokens onto that particular network. And thus, using smart contracts, this entire purchase process becomes automated. And for dealers who want the added security of a third party, smart contracts can also come with multi-signatures. So that gives you an added confidence or a security thing inside the blockchain. Now, I do have a few more examples which I would like to share with you, but I will do that in the next episode, so do stay tuned. And thanks a lot for listening in.